Hello everyone, we're going to be looking at 5 stocks that I personally hold in my portfolio at the moment. The first is COP. Now if you've seen my recent macro videos, you know I'm very bullish on oil longer term. The thesis is multifaceted. Oil has been very cheap for a long time and you would imagine that it should at some point be revalued upwards in the same way that gold and other commodities have been. There's also the potential for more conflict in the Middle East, which would presumably send oil prices higher, and the AI build out and in general the economy needing a lot more energy and a lot more power, a lot more demand for things like oil. And while natural gas is the main thing used for AI at the moment, it's entirely possible that with increased productivity and perhaps more demand in the economy on some level, oil could see increased demand and as a result go higher. So that's the thesis on oil. COP, this is my largest position at the moment. Unlike things like Chevron and ExxonMobil, it hasn't yet had quite the same run up, so trying to essentially play the laggards a little bit here. The chart looks very bullish to me. You've had a parallel channel here and price is now breaking out. We have resistance going way back in time. This is all the way from the 2008 financial crisis, and this high was in 2022. So I would sort of imagine before we have a major recession or down period in the market that COP would likely get up to around the $155 mark, maybe $150, something in this region. Tag that trend line and then perhaps roll over as we have a broader economic downturn. So that's my thesis with COP and why I've invested in it. You can see on my trend indicator that we've put in a buy signal, which is fairly rare, and price has also flipped into a bullish regime. So this is the ideal scenario for me and one that you'll see with pretty much all the stocks that I am invested in currently. So I think the outlook is pretty good for COP. Now I am making this video a week before it will be posted, so prices may have already changed by then. It's possible you'll come back down, retest the top of the parallel channel before heading higher, or you might just be running up further. But just keep in mind the prices in this video might be a little bit out of date. I'm sorry about that, I'm traveling, so had to make some videos in advance. But with that being said, let's move to the next one. Again, a similar thesis here. This is OXY, Occidental Petroleum, a favorite stock of Warren Buffett. He's been bag holding this stock for a long time, as far as I understand. But again, the thesis is very similar with COP. I just wanted a little bit of diversification in the form of another oil stock and not just concentrated in one position. And I am expecting us to at some point break out of this wedge, probably to the upside. This is a stock that more oscillates between very low values and rather high values in the past, typically. Doesn't have to necessarily get all the way up there again. It's possible you even just trade up to the top of this sort of wedge pattern, this resistance trend line, which would represent maybe a 30% move. Of course, there is downside risk with this stock. It's a bit more risky than COP, and the drawdowns are a bit more brutal. So it's a smaller position in my portfolio, but this one should outperform quite drastically if oil does very well. There is an earnings report coming up shortly, which may greatly impact the stock price. So bear with me. It might be that the price is, trading even as low as $38 after that earning report, perhaps. I would imagine it won't, and it will be continuing to go up, but we'll have to wait and see for that. But again, it's a similar story with the indicator here. You've got a buy signal. Last time there was a buy signal on OXY, you had a massive run up. I don't expect you'll have quite the same outperformance. 300% last time was quite incredible, but we do have a buy signal. We are going to be crossing into a bullish regime momentarily, and I think that should be a very good look for the stock. So I'm hoping this one will also be a great outperformer along with COP over the next sort of year or so. Okay, the next stock I have is probably one you've never heard of. I hadn't really heard of it either until it came up on my screener, and it is Academy Sports and Outdoors ASO. This is a retail stock. The thesis here, I suppose if you had to have one, would be the sort of flight safety trade and the potential broadening out of the economy, of the S&P, before tech being sold off and the safer names in some way in the economy being bought up. I think that's why you're seeing this sort of uptrend. We're trading in this parallel channel here with an upside target of potentially around $80, $78 or so, and a lower target of around $36 or so. So quite the potential for a downward move and likewise moves to the upside. The real reason that I'm in this is once again we had a buy signal on this particular stock along with a regime shift into a bullish regime. So once again this is my trading strategy, and I'm not too fussy which names put in the particular buy alerts. I just I'm happy to buy that and wait for the trade to play out in my favor. So next up, a name that has very much fallen out of favor in recent times. Starbucks used to be a very popular company, growing very, very rapidly. They've had to change the CEO around and make a lot of changes in terms of laying off staff and all kinds of stuff like this. But the chart doesn't look too bad. We are in this massive parallel channel, as we often are, with the downside potential of around 20% likely, and upside of around 26%. So not too favored one way or the other, but again, another potential flight to safety sort of trade, a real economy trade as opposed to the AI boom. I think this could do reasonably okay. It's one of the positions I have less confidence in because I'm not sure how many people really are going to Starbucks these days. Has it actually got that same level of popularity that it used to have? But regardless, it has put in a buy signal. The last time you had this, there was some pretty decent outperformance for some period of time. You made it back up to the top of this channel before heading lower. So I would be probably taking profit at the top of the channel again if we were to get there. So far, it's been the worst performing of the positions here, and it's also one of the smaller ones. In fact, the smallest in the portfolio, I think, and the one that I have least conviction on. But, you know, we follow the signals. We hope that price will do what it has historically done. And finally, I am invested in Pepsi. I have been for a while. I actually bought in previously, I think around these sort of levels, around $140 or so, in anticipation of the broader sell-offs on tech and the move to safer names such as healthcare, consumer retail stocks, and this kind of thing. Now, interestingly, Pepsi's been in this massive parallel channel for, you know, a very long time. This low dates back to even 2020, so the COVID crash, essentially, and you've even tagged that trend line in 2015. So I think this is a very reliable parallel channel for a massive stock like Pepsi. Again, you've hit the bottom of the channel in June, and I do imagine the stock should trade up to around $200 at some point in the future, which would be a further 20% from here. Now, again, this is another stock that has actually put in a buy signal here, and we are in a bullish regime once again, and it looks very promising, the price action. You know, you've broken out essentially from these levels around here where there was a lot of resistance and chop, and we are now potentially heading a lot higher. So quite bullish on Pepsi. There are some other names. I was holding MRK, Merck, for example. I might get back into that stock if it has a bit of a pullback. It's possible that Pepsi will experience a little bit of a pullback back to the EMAs or something at some point, but yeah, quite bullish on this stock, as with all the other stocks that have put in buy signals. Of course, this signal doesn't always mean you're going to make money for sure, but the odds are just heavily skewed in our favor. So if we place multiple different trades where the signal has fired, then we should be more than likely making money on those trades. So that's the idea. That's how my portfolio setup is looking. And those are some stocks that I think will outperform over the next year or so compared to things like tech or even perhaps the broader indexes. So with that being said, I hope that's been very helpful for you guys. Gives you a glimpse into how I'm actually trading this market. And with that being said, subscribe as always for more videos, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.